we are from Group 3 and we are here to talk about plant-soil interaction. So there will be two parts in this presentation, which is the water uptake and the mineral uptake. In my part, I will be presenting about one of the pathway in water uptake in plants, which is called apoplastic pathway. Before I proceed with my own presentation, I would like to explain briefly about what is actually apoplastic pathway. So apoplastic pathway is also known to be apoplast pathway. It is a pathway for water molecule transport into the xylem of a plant through their own cell walls. Now, let's move on to the next part of my presentation, which is how do apoplastic works. I will explain this briefly. As we know, in this pathway, water is transported from the root hair to xylem through the cell wall of intervening cells without crossing any membrane or cytoplasm. The water molecule will then move into the cell wall of epidermis. Then, it moves from cell to the adjacent cell through cortex and then to the endodermis. However, at the endodermis, it is interrupted by the presence of impermeable lignosovereign Casparian strips in the cell walls. This is a waterproof tissue that prevents the water molecule from entering the pericycle. So, in this case, the water molecule then enter the cytoplasm and continue their way using symplastic pathway to the xylem. There are few things that we should take note in apoplastic pathway. First, we should know that apoplastic pathway is more faster than the symplast pathway. This is due to the blockage of Casparian strip, which provides high pressure in root and push them to be more faster in the movement of water. Besides, apoplastic pathway does not affected by the metabolic state of root, but it affects the symplast pathway. So that's why the movement of water in apoplastic pathway is more faster than the symplastic pathway. Lastly, the apoplastic pathway also provides least resistance in the movement of water. That's all from me for my presentation about one of the pathway in water uptake, which is apoplastic pathway. Thank you so much for listening.
I'm going to discuss about symplastic pathway, which is one of the main ways that water and dissolved minerals can enter a root. Generally, what is symplastic pathway? So, before I explain about symplastic pathway, I would like to define symplast. Basically, symplast refers to the inner side of plasma membrane, in which waters and low molecular weight solids can freely diffuse. In other words, the connections made between cells by cytoplasmic connections of plasmodesmata is called symplast. Now let us have a look at the functions of plasmodesmata. The plasmodesmata allow direct flows of small molecules like amino acids, sugars, and ions between cells. Small spaces of plasmodesmata cause the waters and minerals to move with high resistance and at a slower speeds compared to apoplastic pathway. Apoplastic pathway, the water moves through the protoplast of the root cortex. It moves these solids from epidermis cells through the cortex into the endodermis. Due to the presence of Casparian strips, the solids are forced into a symplastic pathway once the solid reach endodermal cells through apoplastic pathway. Lastly, let us discuss about the main difference between apoplastic pathway and symplastic pathway. The symplast pathway is a selectively permeable road in which water movement takes place by osmosis. On the other hand, apoplastic pathway is the fully permeable road in which water movement takes place in passive diffusions.
Hey, hi, Assalamualaikum. For my part, I'll be talking about how mutualistic relationship between root nodules and bacteria. Okay. So before this, we've already learned about how the rhizobium or the nitrogen fixing bacteria convert the nitrogen in the air into ammonium. Okay? But what we don't know is that the actual component that is responsible for the conversion is the enzymes in the bacteria, and those enzymes require several conditions in order for them to work. One of the conditions required is that they need to be in a condition where there is no oxygen present, or in simpler terms, we can also call it as anaerobic condition. Okay, so this is where the mutualistic relationship happens. The root nodules created when the rhizobium penetrated the root hairs, they have this condition in which they still have the oxygen, but it is just high enough for the respiratory reaction to occur, but at the same time it is low enough for the enzymes to work. Okay? So to make it even simpler for you guys to understand, so for better comprehension, mutual relationship happen when the root nodules provide a suitable condition for the bacteria, and at the same time the bacteria will help the plants by converting the nitrogen into ammonium, which will be used by them for growth. So that is all from me. Thank you.
Hi everyone. So today I'm going to talk about why mutualistic relationships that can assist roots in obtaining nutrients from the soil. So the relationship that I'm going to talk today is mycorrhizae. So what is mycorrhizae? Mycorrhizae is the term used to describe the symbiotic relationship between mycorrhizal fungi and the plant's root system. Do you guys know how these mutualistic relationships can actually occur? So let me briefly explain to you. First, the spores of the mycorrhizal fungi germinates and makes their way towards the nearest roots. The roots are then colonized by the fungi and mycorrhizae are established. Once the mycorrhizae are established, the fungi penetrate the roots and create an internal network of fungal structure in the root cells. This is where plants and mycorrhizae exchange sugars and nutrients. Finally, the hyphae continue to develop outside the roots and extended network of 5 filaments, which can cover up to 700 times more soil area than plants own. In conclusion, this secondary root system draw in extra beneficial nutrients and water, supporting a tree or plant for its entire life.
Okay, so the next question is, how fungi plays an important role for roots to absorb nutrients?
Okay, mycorrhiza is part of the fungi as well. So mycorrhiza is basically serve the purpose of it to actually make the nutrients, especially phosphorus. Okay, so phosphorus, if you look at the periodic table, it is in forms of P. Okay, P stands for phosphorus element. Okay, but then similar like the nitrogen situation just now, in order for the plant to uptake the nutrients from the roots, okay, so it needs to be in forms of low molecular weight forms, which is basically plant readily available nutrient for uptake. Okay, so in order for plants to be readily uptake the nutrients from the what we call as the rooting zone, okay, so it needs to be in a very simple form. Okay, so P in phosphorus is not in a simple form. So what type of phosphorus is in a simple form? It can be phosphate. Okay, phosphate is the type of nutrient or mineral that is basically in the simplest form, which can be readily taken up by plants. So phosphate, it can be in forms of PO4 to negative. Okay, so phosphate. So that is the form that is basically readily available to be taken up. So the function of mycorrhiza, like fungi, they actually serve what do you call that, a good environment for the rooting zone, okay, they can actually solubilize phosphorus, okay. So the key word over here is solubilize, okay. Solubilize means that to make phosphorus in a heavy form, in a complex form, in order for it to be readily available for plant uptake. So phosphorus can be solubilized into phosphate. Okay, so that is the role of fungi.